is Michael Perry, production designer of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and this is the Go Creative Show.
Hello and welcome to the Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers. My name is Ben Consoli, and today we speak with Michael Perry, production designer of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
I just finished watching it last night by myself with all the shades drawn, windows open. I'm like, I don't know if this is the best time to be watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it was so much fun. It was awesome. I think clearly fans of Texas Chainsaw, I think, are really going to enjoy this. There's so many Easter eggs and so many nods to the original, and it's just a fun horror movie. But I think just horror fans in general are really going to enjoy this and are enjoying it, as you see online. So, congratulations on such a success. There's a ton to talk about, and we're going to get to it all. But before we get there, I just want to very quickly mention our sponsor today, Filmmakers Academy. Master your craft at Filmmakers Academy. Visit gocreativeshow.com/Filmmakers Academy and get 10% off with promo code GOCREATIVE10. Of course, I also want you to follow us on your favorite podcast app, as well as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. All things Go Creative Show at gocreativeshow.com. So, first thing I want to talk about is blood.
Sure.
Blood, of which there's gallons and gallons and gallons of it in this film. And I think that, there's kind of sort of a unique set of circumstances that need to happen to be filming with blood. And I think a lot of our audience, myself included, haven't really had that opportunity, especially at these quantities. I'd love to hear from your perspective as a production designer, what are the challenges of shooting with blood and so much of it? And first of all, how much of that was actually there and how much was CGI? That's what the internet wants to know.
Anytime you see a plunging of the chainsaw into a person, there are blood bags there, and then CGI will clean it up. But otherwise, the whole brief was to do this as practical as possible. So, yeah, we in the bus scene, we went through 200 gallons of blood. We had blood misters. We had blood cannons. And from a technical standpoint, of course, the hardest thing with blood, if you have to go back to the original setup, is cleaning up of the blood.
Yeah.
So we have different types of blood. So if there's a scene where there's blood, and then we're going to reset and shoot it again, it has some sort of dish soap in it so that we can clean it up quicker. And there are a lot of different formulas, and they're all kept secret by the blood masters. So I don't really even know what all goes into it, but...
Oh, you don't even know. You don't even have the secret recipe.
No. I know that there's some sort of soap product in the stuff we have to get up. And there's some blood that's more clingy. There's more types of blood that drip faster. It's a whole, it's a special effects specialty. Yeah. And they really get into it.
I can imagine. I'm thinking about it with all of those scenes and blood squirting everywhere. I'm thinking to myself, do they have to completely change their schedule, the shooting schedule, to accommodate for all these takes? I mean, when you have that much blood going all over the place and you have a schedule to maintain, I mean, you really can't have a director that wants to do 8 million takes. It doesn't work.
No. Although I will say, Fede Alvarez, who was one of the producers and was in LA, so he'd see our dailies, and there are times where he said, yeah, you got to reshoot that, and it needs a lot more blood. So,
and a producer saying that to reshoot.
Yeah. So, well, because, we knew going into this that this was going to be, to some people, Texas Chainsaw, the original, is, I don't know what, the Bible of horror. So And right off the bat, we decided we weren't going to be like the sequels. It wasn't going to be all that family, all the confusing stuff that's been added to all the sequels. It wasn't going to be in a house in the middle of nowhere. We had to change it up. And we sort of pledged ourselves to Texas, Chainsaw, and a Massacre.
Yeah.
And I think we delivered all of that.
You certainly did. I mean, there were quite a few not, and for people that don't know, I mean, this is purely like a sequel to the original. You like you said, in the way that Halloween, when they did their reboot a few years back, sort of disregarded everything and just did a sequel of the original. And when you're doing something like that, do you feel a sense of responsibility to the original, just knowing that? Like I think horror movie genre and superhero movie genre, it seems like you both suffer the same fate in that your audiences are rabid, which is great, because they're going to come out. But it's also a little scary because they have really high standards. Yeah, exactly. So like how—
They find your email.
Exactly. So like how do you feel when you're going into a project like this that's, legendary in its franchise, and that you're going to have so many eyes looking at it critically?
Well, I knew that. I was accepting of that because I also know once you finish a project, a film, and it's out there, it's like putting a painting, in a museum. It's no longer yours. It doesn't really matter what your intent is, And I've had it work both ways. I've had movies that were both critical and audience success. And I've had ones that just no one went to. So, it's usually that kind of a thing. I'm just getting a little bit of water here.
Yeah,
definitely
take a sip. You might as well. I think I'm going to do the same. But what were you saying? I mean, you said you knew going in, you're going to accept it. This is what it's going to be. I know that once I put it out there, it's no longer mine. Continue down that path.
Well, I think that with this movie, especially, we knew all the fandom. I mean, so many people consider it like the best horror movie. I don't really necessarily do. I don't have that kind of reverence for it. It's a good ass scary movie, but over the years, as a scenic painter when we were doing lots of rock videos, I actually worked with Hooper and Daniel Pearl. Yeah, they weren't that impressive. It was the 80s, they had their problems. So that was the one thing that I wasn't scared of. And I told them up front, it's not my favorite horror movie. And I've heard, a lot of inside stories about it. And so I wasn't beating myself up about doing that. I definitely took it because it was taking the character and setting it in a different place.
Yep.
Not messing around. I think we run 83 minutes. And I'm of a certain belief sometimes a movie shouldn't be more than 90 minutes.
I feel that way too. And I know my producer Connor is watching this now and he's like, yes, that is what he always says. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you can get the job done in that time. So, that was our goal. I mean, we have Easter eggs. The biggest Easter egg.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the Easter eggs because there are many. And, one in particular you had just mentioned, I don't know if it's necessarily an Easter egg or just an unusual coincidence, but an 83-minute runtime, I was reading online, is the exact same runtime as the original. Was that purposeful or did it just land that way?
No, it was purposeful.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there are certain things that we just, here's the other big thing. The chainsaw is the original chainsaw.
No way.
Yeah. Kim, I'm not going to remember his name now, Kim Henkel, who wrote the first one. He directed the third one. He kept the first one and never used it again. And then he gave it to us to use on this one.
No way. Wow.
And it was so temperamental, being a 40-year-old chainsaw. You know, it ran when it wanted to, and it stopped when it wanted to. But anytime you see the blades turning, that's the real thing.
Wow, that's crazy. And of course, you had the narration at the beginning, which I think was who did John Larroquette. Yes.
Yep.
Again, back to do the narration at the beginning. So
exactly.
Right from the top. Are there any other Easter eggs that you guys threw in there that, you know, maybe some that people still haven't uncovered?
There are. The town of Harlow is population is 1973, I think, or 4, which was the year the film came out.
Oh, yeah.
What else? I did build one bone chair. I don't think you really, there's a moment when you see it, but it wasn't as a big a Easter egg as I had planned it to be.
The post-credit scene.
Post-credit scene, yeah.
Yes. Talk to us about that.
Well, that one wasn't really planned, but once they put the movie together, they went, "Oh, let's not cut our nose off to spite our face just in case." So they lead it to, you know, an obvious kind of conclusion that, yeah, he's still here. Besides, just, you know, he's been shot 5 times. I will say that we played Leatherface as almost not a superhero, but of that sort of indestructible. We don't know why. He's just, you know, was he 73 or something like that? He's still got it.
He certainly does.
Still got it.
Well, let's talk about the inspiration for the film. Clearly, like we mentioned, it is a sequel to the original. You sort of forget everything that happened in between. So how much are you taking from the original film? Like, in your designs and the way that you create this 2022 version,
Right.
How much does the original influence that?
Well, obviously you're dealing with Texas, which is hard in Bulgaria. But we built that town.
Oh, wow. So the whole town was built in Bulgaria. I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's all sets. I don't believe there's anything everything is sets. The gas station we built just on the side of the road, because their gas stations don't look like our gas stations. Mm-hmm. The whole street, you know, had 2, basically H. So we did 40 facades and 3 with interior sets off the street.
Oh, wow.
And the second floor we built on stage. The underground slicing up when she's under the house, that was a stage. The school shooting was a stage. And the bus interior was built on stage, which was one of the most amazing things I've seen carpenters do, because those are like compound angles. Well, it's a compound angles, and they built it out of MDF board. It was like, I don't even understand how they did it, to be honest with you. The craftsmanship in Bulgaria is the highest I've ever worked with. Those towns, all that brickwork, that was hand carved from foam.
Wow.
Yeah. When they told me how I was doing it, I was like, I went to the producers, I'm going, we can't. There's no way we can finish this in time to shoot. They did. They had beautiful painters, beautiful sculptors, great art department to work with. I can't say. I mean, a couple of gigs that are in discussion. I keep going. Well, in Bulgaria. So I'm
it's like now they rose the bar. So all right. So I want to kind of like visualize the exterior that you're talking about here. So like in Bulgaria, was any of that like did you build the street as well, or did you kind of create facades around an existing street?
There was a film, something like Alabama Hurricane, that had built some stuff there. So there's the main street was there, and all around the facades, I mean, they were extra strength. I think maybe there's 2 or 3 that we just repainted and used, but everything else we added Texas fretwork with bricks, because West Texas towns like that are very ornate, which has to do with Texas Architecture School in the University of Texas had just started, and they went to the World's Fair in Chicago, and that influenced them to do all that weird detail work and brickwork. So, we carried that over.
Now, I'm curious because Texas has a very distinct look about it. Just the dusty environment, the sun angle, everything really gives it a very special look. And I can only assume, I've never been in Bulgaria, but I can only assume that there's quite a difference in just the overall look of it. And yeah, you can do stuff with lighting and color grade, but were there things in the set design that you had to do in order to give it that Texas look with that Bulgarian sun?
Yeah. No, we did. Well, one of the things on the interiors, there's usually some color window or some opening so that Rick Diaz, the DP, could throw in shafts of light, so that the Texas intensity could be done through those lighting things. I will say that the sunflower scene, sunflower scene where he drives through, and those exist in Texas. There's both Texas and Bulgaria have huge sunflower farms. We like the what is it? The garage has has a Alamo outline. There's a lot of Texas stars carved into the buildings, and all that's subliminal, but it makes you think. I mean, I don't know. There are a lot of reviews, a lot of the negative reviews. They never mention. They just assume it was shot in Texas, which is very cool for me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we were. Me and my team, we did a great job, and I think that Rick Diaz and David Garcia were very, very good at setting up, and they're both Texans. So, if anything rang not true, we got rid of it.
Yeah, exactly. How much were you inspired by the original film?
Very little. I'll be honest. Yeah. The tones, we actually played around with some different tones of, cooler colors, different things. We settled on the basic, the look of the sort of hot, amber feeling stuff. But I saw the movie when I was a kid. Well, I wasn't a kid, I was in college, but I saw it, like in a midnight show. And then I watched it once again before I left, but that's it. I wasn't referring back to it. I wasn't, messing with it. It was like, this is our version of that story. And the one thing we did do, we talked about this is, the first one, nobody answers any questions. Nobody goes, why are these kids here? Who is this? What are those? Why is this happening? No, it was just, done.
It just happened. Yeah.
And that's how, so that's how we took the approach where, there's a little backstory. There's a little, I've read some things, well, there wasn't much character development. No, because they were meat. They were people that were going to be killed. So yes, they didn't all have backstories,
It does make me laugh when I hear negative reviews of something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like, obviously if someone just legitimately didn't like it, then whatever. But when you hear negative reviews about stuff like that, it's like, it really, you shouldn't be comparing it to like this great, award-winning like movie of the year. It's not that. It's just, what are you doing? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
to me.
I that's the funny. I really enjoy the negative reviews because they're so funny to me. Yeah. Well, they're just like they make up stuff. I didn't. Just before this, I had no idea this existed, but people on YouTube sort of reviewing the trailer.
Oh yeah,
and coming up with what they think the movie's about. And you just sat there and went like, no, you're completely wrong. It's just, that's not it at all. And it's fun. I'm always tempted, but I know better, to just write, no, you're wrong on that one. But they do it so smugly, right? Like they've got the inside track of what happened. And you're just like, wow, that's, everybody gets their 15 minutes.
I love that. How long was filming on Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Well, I think we shot 45 days. Yeah, no, it was
That's pretty quick.
It was a reason
in total, like stage work too. Everything was 45 days.
Yeah. That's about the medium. I did Promising Young Woman, and we shot that in 23 days. So lower budget things tend to be very short because that's where you're spending all your money.
Yeah, exactly.
But we had a very extended prep because we were in Bulgaria for 2 weeks, and then COVID hit, and they kicked us out of the country. But Legendary was very nice enough to just keep me working here in the studio. So we had a really good, plan. And when we got back, it was, in reality, I was probably on it for 7 months. And, it didn't seem to fly fast for me. And we were shooting 6 days a week, which I normally just have nothing to do with, but in this case, it was fine.
That's grueling. But it is, you only have so much time to get it done. So now the film is done. It's out there. People are starting to react to it.
Yeah.
When you look back on it and you watch it now, is there a particular set that you think was just really fun to do, really successful? Like, what was your favorite of all of the sets?
This is going to sound stupid. The gas station.
Well, I'm not surprised, but tell me why.
Well, it's a complete build. The signs, the pumps, all that stuff had to be built. And, for an American, what I used to do a lot of commercials and do them in foreign countries to be America. So I kind of learned to how to give an iconic look to something very quickly. But I know if it's not right, it takes you out of it right away. So it was getting all the right candy. that was a big pain in the ass. So we couldn't get anything from Bulgaria. It's in Bulgarian. So we got all this American candy and stuff in, and it was a big push on my part with the team to understand you can't put enough shit in a country gas station. It's just full of stuff. And the other fun part of that was that, we have the video running as if the original Chainsaw was a real event that's talked about. And then we have all the weird souvenirs that were for, as if it was the actual event.
Yeah, it's almost the town almost like has its identity based on that original massacre that happened.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's interesting to see that the store was one of your favorites because of all the detail in it, and because you're really trying to create the U.S. in another country. I mean, when you, I think my guess is that a success for you is when somebody watches it and doesn't even think twice about it, and just like, oh yeah, they were in a gas station in Texas. Like, you don't even think about it.
There's definitely two versions of my career. One is that as if you've done nothing. The story works. Nobody thinks about the sets, and it just is so you're invisible. Then there's the ones where you get to show off, and it is about the scenery. So which ones I prefer? It's two different sets of projects in a way. And see how the approach is completely different.
I want to take a quick moment and talk about Filmmakers Academy. Now, on Filmmakers Academy, there are tons of great courses, but I want to highlight one for you today called How to Be a Camera Assistant. We've got its trainer, Derek Edwards, on the show today to talk about the course for just a moment. You're a camera assistant. You live and die by your tools, certainly on set. What's the most important tool in your kit and why?
I'm gonna say I have two. And I'm gonna give you something from the way past that we love and everyone should have is this little Craftsman stubby screwdriver that's about yay big, and every job I need this screwdriver. I don't care. It's vital. And in today's age, my Hilti, I have to have my laser because nowadays we have to move so fast. So I just need to be able to tag something.
What is it?
And a laser. It's a Hilti. So it's a measuring device about yay big. It's PDE is the model number, but it's just a laser measuring device. So I'm not running a hard tape. I'm not running a soft tape. I just point my laser, tag them. It gives me a little readout, gives me the distance, and I'm ready to go. It goes up to like 500 feet. So, 2 tools.
I love that.
Yeah.
There you go, 2 tools. And so much more information, including your entire course, is available right now on filmmakersacademy.com. So guys, check it out for yourself. You will absolutely love that one. How to Be a Camera Assistant on filmmakersacademy.com. What was the most challenging set for you?
Oh, I can tell you that easy. The crawl space where she's running in the sauce. Okay. So originally I wanted to build that with the floor on chains so we could lift it up and bring it down as needed. So that got nixed. I didn't think there were any chain things to do that with. So we built it solid. We built it as a real floor. And then underneath it, we had a box and laid the dirt in. So at 4 different times, 4 different people wanted the height of the dirt somewhat differently. Now, if I had the chains on it, I could have brought the floor further down and up as needed. But no, I had to build that. So they'd go, no, we need to make this, it needs to be higher. So put more dirt.
For what reasons?
They would think it wasn't close enough. Or once I got it close enough, they didn't think it needed to be less close. So the height of that thing changed 4 times, and it drove me insane because we'd have to reinforce the floor because there'd be twice as much dirt in it. And then there just seemed to be an ever decreasing and increasing pile of dirt by the elephant doors into the stage because they'd either be pulling it out or putting it in. So yeah, that was my least favorite thing.
Well, your least favorite makes sense to be least favorite. Was that also technically for you like the most challenging, just having to make those modifications? Or was there a set in particular that just was particularly hard because you couldn't find a certain prop or you just was impossible to build based on the director's specs?
What's crazy is I've been in the business for a bit. So sometimes I don't even think about sort of newer technologies, which I'm taking a look for. So we built the high school hallway where she had a problem. The one thing we couldn't duplicate, we couldn't find lockers like American lockers. So we made those out of wood with the slats in them, right height. But we had no, that little door latch with the hole in it. There was none. And I had like 50 lockers in there. But there was a guy who 3D'd them for us. And, they just came in with a bag of them. And they were perfect. And it's like, yeah, okay, I got to do that more. That's a good use of technology.
Was that the first time you've ever had things 3D printed, at least that you knew of?
I think there's been some stuff, but not like out of thin air where it was actually modeled and done. I have learned how to do it now, because it's a great thing, especially when you're overseas. Like when I go overseas and I do things, I always bring electric outlets with me and their faces because the power systems are always completely different. So I always make sure that it's American outlets. It's just, experience.
Now, just between
coffee pots are hard. Yeah.
Oh, really? Coffee pots are hard.
Because they ever drink espresso from machines.
Oh, yeah.
So
you don't
just
think
Mr.
about
Coffee
that stuff.
Doesn't exist.
Exactly. You don't think about that stuff. Well, yeah, you do. Painstaking,
I do now.
I'm sure. Yes.
Yeah. But there was a time where I didn't know that. But yeah, so I kind of have that stuff always in the back of my head.
I'm curious about a mistake that you made in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. I mean, like, there's, and it's just between us. We're going to keep it secret. But I love to know, like, when you watch the film, is there something that you see that you're like, I really could have, I should have done that. I should have done that. It's like, for instance, we interviewed the DP of the most recent Scream. And I guess there was a piece of gaff tape or black wrap or something left on a chandelier. It never got removed. He sees it. It drives him insane. It's in the trailer. It drives him insane. Is there something when you watch the film that you're like, oh, if I just had, I knew I should have done this or that. Is there one of those moments?
Well, I only watch my films the one time. And then they get packed away. But a DP has to watch it in coloring and stuff like that, so he's more attuned to it. A Fabulous Baker Boys, whenever I watch that, there's a set of curtains that they didn't seam, so there's the creases in them. And every time it shows up, I'm just like, on this one, let me see. I'm sure there must be. Let me think here. there is one thing that bothers me.
Yeah,
but
there always is.
works.
It's like if you leave enough dead air, something will pop up.
Yeah. Well, there's a thing that the director asked for like the day before shooting. And I argued with him because it made no architectural sense whatsoever. And he kept going, I don't care. We need it for the scene. And I'm like, I always raise my, like objections. The director has the final say. But at the top of those stairs in the orphanage there's that round oculus window.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know where the fuck I don't know what's on the other side of that. It's a brick wall. There's no logical sense for that window except when he stands in front of it. But it still bothers me that it was like, yeah, architecturally.
Because you're thinking about it through architecture and construction and design, where I guess the director was just thinking it's a cool light source, and
absolutely, it's a cool, yeah, and it is a cool shot.
It is.
I always when I'm wrong about it, I'm happy to admit it. It's because it worked. It worked, and as long as nobody tries to figure out the geography, it's fine.
I wanted to talk to you about, and this might be more of just a general philosophy of production design, but when you're working on a horror film, and not all horror films, but when you're on this film, it's short film, it moves quick, not a ton of dialogue, no real character development, because you, quite frankly, don't need it. When you don't have other things informing you about the characters and what's going on, how does the production design sort of fill that role? Because a lot in this film is inferred by the production design. And I think you can probably apply that to other movies you've worked on. How much do you think about developing character, developing story, supporting story in your production designs?
That's the goal, is to create a world that this story can exist in, which doesn't mean it has to be realistic. I'm promising a woman doesn't look like anything in the real world. But it's odd you're saying that, because there came a moment where he was, Leatherface lives upstairs, and there's a little room, and he's done all kinds of like little drawings, and that all came from us like, what the hell would it be like to be Leatherface and in this room? And why has he been so calm? And so it was like drawings of a child that was happy. They weren't like disturbed paintings. They were happy paintings or drawings. So yeah, I have to fill in the gap sometimes. And sometimes I fill in the gap and I don't tell anybody or ask anybody what they think or want. I do try to work with actors when they first come in and go, do you feel your character needs anything specifically, in a room or a space? And then other times it's me filling in blanks, which, is part of the training too, of kind of understanding that you need this or you don't need that, or So character development was super thin on this. So
but but at the same time, you do feel like you know these characters a little bit, or at least the personalities they represent. For instance, the choice of an electric car, the choice of making sure everybody has cell phones and pulls them out at that moment during the bus scene. Like you said, Leatherface's drawings. Like, there are things that are unsaid that help really fill out and flesh out these characters.
That's something I do one shape or another, form or another, on everything I've done. It's finding that right mix, I guess. The other big thing was the bus. I picked the colors in the bus, making sure that the ceiling was white. Like nobody ever talked about that. And then I did it.
Why?
And they were like, oh, of course so that you couldn't mistake what was going to happen when it happened.
Yes. The perfect canvas for blood splatter.
Is the perfect, exactly. And no one went, oh, we need to do this, or talked about it. I just one day went, oh yeah, we should make this white. And that's what we did, and it worked great.
Well, that's interesting. Like when you are designing sets and you know that blood needs to be splattered all over the wall. I mean, in this case of the bus, certainly you did. I mean, is that coming into play everywhere? Are you thinking about that in the ground and in the wall colors and all that?
My head is full of nonsense, and I have the greatest job in film, because really, when I have a full crew, I basically drink coffee, draw pictures, and make up shit to do. Other people are physically doing it. I try to draw everyone on the team as co-designers, but they have to actually do physical work, and I just draw little pictures.
You point. Move that over there.
Some of them
do that.
I do. No, he's exactly right. Sometimes my job is editorial. Okay, there's too much stuff on the walls. Let's take it down. It's one of my big pet peeves. You'll see stuff on movies or TV shows, especially TV shows. There's about 40% more pictures on the walls than you would ever see in real life. But they're always afraid that there's going to be a blank space behind the person. And I'm like, yeah, but there are blank spaces behind people. And that says something much more interesting than another prop house painting with too ornate a frame.
Yeah. A lot of aging was done on these sets. And I'd love to just talk to you about the techniques for aging props and aging your sets. What do you do?
Well, and this one especially, let's just talk about like the front hallway of the orphanage. All those doors were handmade. All that, like nothing, nobody went down to the store and bought the railings. That was all hand done, the stairs. Everything was hand done. So right away, you're looking at basically unfinished wood. It's not necessarily what you want color-wise. So first you find the stain that you pick. Then, the best way I know of is to start basically doing it as real as possible, and then go into the distressing from there. So then you go in and you add chemicals to make stuff start to peel using hot guns. Then I come in and in this one I wanted what we don't use it in the anymore, but we definitely use it in the old days with bars, and it's like a light tobacco stain, but it's done as almost a fog. So it falls into crevices. It builds up in corners. It does that. Then from there, then we used some wallpaper so we could bubble it off. We put in a few leaks, painted those in.
What is that? Like water leaks. I see what you mean. Okay.
Water leaks. Yep. So they paint those into the corners. And you just keep doing it till you say stop.
Yeah.
Because they'll come in like on those doors, you'll see not fresh wood, but we chipped and hit it with chains and then any of the white spots that came through, we just did them as a lighter version of the over. The painters there were fantastic. They were all trained from Italian scene painters that worked at Cinecittà.
Oh, wow.
And it was just beautiful. It was a beautiful thing to watch, the speed. And
it sounds like you got some real craftsmanship. Like you said earlier, creating the bricks out of the foam, hand doing it, not doing it in a cast. Like, sounds like it would take forever. It almost sounds like, why? But at the same time, you get a really perfect result.
But that's right. On one building, I came in the morning. They were just putting up sheets of white foam. I came at lunch. It had all been carved out, and they were putting the plaster on.
Oh, my God.
When I left that night, they'd put the first coat of paint on.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, I had a lot of guys. If you look at that credits and you look at the painters and the sculptors, it was a lot of people. But I don't know that I could find that craftsman here. Huh. I mean, I certainly couldn't do it anywhere for the price, and I certainly couldn't do it speed-wise. But they were, they're the best craftsmen I've worked with anywhere. And I've worked at a lot of
That's interesting, because you always think about people making choices of where to film based on tax credit and things like that. You don't necessarily think of it based on the craftsmanship for the production design. I think that this might be the first that we've even discussed that, but that's such an integral part, is the speed, the amount of people, the craftsmanship. Yeah. Otherwise, it just can't get done.
Right. I mean, I'd be still building if I was doing it in Hollywood.
Wow.
And then it'd take me a couple of weeks more if I did it in Atlanta.
Wow. I want to wrap up our conversation with probably the most impactful scene, the one everyone is talking about. It hits you like a hammer at the end of the film in the last couple of seconds, but it's when Melody gets completely decapitated by Leatherface. It comes out of nowhere. I mean, I guess you might be expecting some little twist at the end, but I don't think anybody was expecting this. And it was just, it looked so good. And it was that moment where you're like, oh my God, like you just weren't expecting it. I'd love to first get your reaction from that when you see it on the page. What's your initial thought? And then also, how did you execute that?
Well, the big, the reason for it is there can only be one final girl.
There you go. There you go.
Trope.
You're right.
That's the trope. You sit and you think they're both going to get away. And no, that's not going to happen. This is Leatherface. This is what's going to happen. So we had an amazing, Alta Vista was the company that was doing all the sculpting. And, her head was sculpted early on. So we got used to it, that it was around and doing it. I will tell you that was shot just before it was getting dark. So I don't think we had more than 3 takes of that. And it's funny, I was on set that day, which I'm not a lot of. I was on the set that day and shot it on my iPhone while it was happening. And the only real difference is she's laying there with a green hood, but that head,
it's awesome. Oh, I would love to see that iPhone video. That is some behind the scenes gold.
Real top.
Yes, we'd love to see that.
And then he does his dance.
Yep.
We got 1 take of the dance. That's amazing. To me, that's always amazing. That it just works like that. Yeah.
Yeah. What a great scene. When you see that on the paper and you're reading the script, what was your initial thought?
Oh, shit. There's a lot of those. You read it and you're like, because you're trying, for a production designer, you're signing on in the middle of the process. So you have no idea what the conversations were in the writing room, the production going through it or whatever. So you have to feel like you have an attachment to do a project. Because it's, it's painful. So when you're reading it, you're like, do I go any further with meetings with people? Is this too weird? Is this, because I've done a lot of horror. I never think of doing a horror movie as a horror movie. And it's not even a genre I enjoy. So I approach it as a film. I approach all of my movies exactly the same way. So I honestly basically decided to do that movie because of the end. Yeah. So that, because I was reading it and it's like, oh, they're going to get away. It's like, oh, final. Okay, great. So I went, it hits enough things. It's, obviously building a thing in Texas, a Texas town in Bulgaria was very attractive. But in the back of my head, it's like, dude, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And no matter what, you're always going to be associated with it. Yeah. Why not?
Exactly. I love that. Yeah. And now you got me started on one other topic before we head out. And I hope you have a few extra minutes. But this idea of horror tropes, I almost feel bad saying that word because it sounds like disrespectful in a way, but it's really not. I mean, there are things that just happen in horror movies that you want to happen and they're satisfying. And when they're not done, you miss it. And when they're done well, you celebrate it. And I feel like The Final Girl is one, but then you also have that, like the last gas station. It's like the last bit of normalcy before you head into your eventual demise. You have, there's a few in this film. You have that, the gas station. You have the last girl, like you mentioned. You also have the hiding in the closet, a la Halloween, the original one. Under the bed, hiding under the bed. There are things that you've seen before, but for some reason, they're still entertaining. They still give you some surprises. And I think that's a true testament to the work that you guys put into that.
Yeah, it's the kind of, it is funny. I find most horror that I'm attracted to and do is like It Follows, where we're not doing any of the tropes. We're breaking in new things. We're almost throwing it, there's no claustrophobia there, So that's, that's something I find. And I also find that horror movies are like the 40s and 50s film noir, where you can introduce subjects that normal films won't tackle. There's, I've got a script right now, which is beautiful, but it's about systemic racism, but it's built around a horror movie story that's very strong. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, outside of like commenting on, millennials,
and maybe a touch of gun violence. It's not a commentary. I mean, it's definitely not. I don't think it's taking a stance by any means, but there's things in there.
No. I'll give you a piece of, I may not get the next movie because of it, but I'll give you a piece of information that explains a couple of things that people are confused about. So the point of her having that, being a survivor, and originally she was paralyzed in a wheelchair. So that's the other, callback. But she was a survivor and she didn't know exactly what that meant for her. The Hardesty did not come to kill Leatherface, but she wanted to be killed by Leatherface so that she could be back with her friends because of her survival guilt. Now that changed, but that's what tied the two together, is the same common thing of surviving a massacre. That was a little too deep.
Yeah, that's hard to do with, so little dialogue and just a quick-paced movie. That's a lot to carry.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was just a line of like, we use it where, say my name, remember, and it's like, he doesn't know who she is. It was nothing to him, and to carry all of that your whole life and you just find out you're an afterthought. Is pretty devastating.
Oh, that is interesting. Why do you think that's going to prevent you from your next film? Giving away trade secrets?
Because I'm talking about it. Yeah, I'm talking about an early version of the script.
We're gonna just keep it among us. Everyone here is professionals. We know what to do.
Exactly. But so some of the there's been things like, why did you bring back her, and you didn't give her much to do, and is she like in Halloween? And it's like no, and no. That's not why she was brought back. It was to connect the passing of the generation, the survivor of one massacre to the next massacre.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And like I said, I really enjoyed the film. It's a fun slasher film. Like, everybody just relax. Don't get so serious about it. It's just a fun movie to watch. And yeah, there certainly is negative comments. There always is going to be. But I think overwhelmingly people are enjoying it. When you go to resources that celebrate this type of film, it's being celebrated. People are enjoying it, and it's just it's a fun watch, and it's 83 minutes. I mean, come on. But it was awesome. It's available on Netflix now, of course. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that's it. But it's the 2022 version, obviously. And really enjoyed talking with you, Michael. That was a lot of fun. Thank you for your honesty and your insight, and we'd love to have you back.
Anytime.
All right, a huge thank you to Michael Perry, production designer of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Thank you so much, Michael, for being on the show and talking to us all today. I want to thank our sponsor, Filmmakers Academy. Master your craft at Filmmakers Academy. Head over to gocreativeshow.com/Filmmakers Academy and get 10% off your purchase with promo code GOCREATIVE10. I also want to thank Connor Crosby from Ignition Visuals for producing our show, as well as Dave Siegel from Siegel Sound for mixing and mastering and making it sound so good. Of course, encourage you all to follow us on your favorite podcast app and hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, where you can not only hear the episode, but see the episode. All things Go Creative Show at gocreativeshow.com. And if you want to follow me, I'm available on Instagram. It's probably the best place to find me. At Ben Consoli. I post a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff and, of course, things that I'm working on with my own company, BC Media Productions. Thank you guys for joining us today, and we will see you next week on another episode of the Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers.